Well, welcome to River City and the Music Man. And do you see that handsome young man right there with the cane and the sort of band leader chasuble type thing? That is young Harold Hill, Lon Milo DuQuette in 1965 production of the Columbus High School Music Man. Well, you got trouble, my friend. Right here I say trouble right here in River City. Why, sure, I'm a billiard player. Certainly mighty proud to say. I'm always mighty proud to say it. I consider that the hours I spend with the cue in my hand are gold and help you cultivate horse sense and a cool head and a keen eye. Did you ever take and try to give an ironclad lead to yourself from a three-rail billiard shot? But just as I say, it takes judgment, brains, and maturity to score in a buck-fine game. I say that any boob can take and shove a ball in a pocket. And I call that sloth, the first big step on the roads to the depths of degradé. Medicinal wine from a teaspoon, then beer from a bottle. Some things you never forget. Anyway, I pull that out because I'm packing it up. So, welcome to Saturday Morning with Lon. And this morning, I'm going to read something that is that I wrote for several anthologies, including the Golden Dawn Journal and Rebels and Devils, and it's sort of been one of my most famous essays, actually. It's called Devil Be My God. And it just amazes me that when I think that it's only been 100 years, little over 100 years, since women in the United States have had the right to vote. And then I look around on the evening news and see nothing but the subjugation and the exploitation and the abuse of women all over the world. You know, we can put millionaires and billionaires in space, and we could do all sorts of things except treat half of us equally, as equals. And it's just amazes me. And being born in 1948 and with sort of World War II consciousness in the world, I'm as guilty as the next person of being raised with this sort of patronizing attitude as a constant background meditation. But some things are, of course, getting better in certain areas, but not fast enough or complete enough. So thinking about that, this essay really is more timely than ever than 40 years ago or whenever I wrote it. It's called Devil Be My God. In AD 415, Cyril, the Bishop of Alexandria, Egypt, found himself in a most awkward position. Not only was he burdened with the task of concocting viable doctrines, he came up with the idea, or at least he crystallized the idea of the Trinity, Cyril of Alexandria. He was burdened with the task of concocting viable doctrines from the muddled and conflicting traditions of the young Christian cult. This is in 415. Excuse me. He was required to do so in the most sophisticated and enlightened pagan city on earth. Long before the alleged virgin birth of the crucified Savior, Alexandria, with her celebrated schools and library, nurtured the greatest minds in the Mediterranean world and Asia, and I might add, as far as India. Here, religion and philosophy were lovers, and their union gave rise to a dynamic environment of dialogue and debate. On more than one occasion, Cyril tried to glean converts from the student body of the Neoplatonic Academy, only to be struck dumb by the discomforting realization that the fledgling philosophers were far more knowledgeable than he about the subtleties and shortcomings of his own faith. Uncomfortable as such moments were, his grace bore them dutifully. They afforded him the opportunity to suffer for his faith. His patience came to an end, however, when his faith and reputation were challenged by a brilliant and charismatic luminary of the Alexandrian school of Neoplatonism, Hypatia, the greatest woman initiate of the ancient world. Hypatia of Alexandria was without question the most respected and influential thinker of her day. The daughter of the great mathematician Theon, she took over her father's honored position at the academy and lectured there for many years. She, more than any other individual since Plotinus, father of Neoplatonism, grasped the profound potential of that school of thought. Her lectures were wildly popular and attracted a stream of scholars who saw in Neoplatonism the possibility of a truly universal spiritual order, a supreme philosophy, an enlightened religion to unite all religions. Such was the golden promise of Neoplatonism. And Hypatia of Alexandria was its virgin prophetess. Troubled by the continued degeneration of the Christian movement, remember this is like the early 400s, troubled by the continued degeneration of the Christian movement, its intolerance of other faiths, and its dangerous preoccupation with miracles and wonders, Hypatia began a series of public lectures dealing with the cult. She revealed the pagan roots of the faith and systematically unmasked the absurdities and superstitions that had infected the movement. Then, with power and eloquence surpassing that of any Christian apologist, she elucidated upon what she understood to be the true spiritual treasures found in the purported teachings of the Christ. Her arguments were so persuasive that many new converts to the cult renounced their conversions and became disciples of Hypatia. Her lectures stimulated enormous interest in Christianity, but not Christianity as it was presented by Cyril, the bishop of Alexandria. Not blessed with the strength of character necessary to suffer a personal confrontation with Hypatia, Cyril embarked upon a campaign of personal vilification by preaching to his unwashed and fanatical crowd. Now, when I say unwashed, I really mean unwashed. There were those among the early Christian cultists that viewed bathing as vain and a sin. So they were literally an unwashed and fanatical flock. So Cyril started preaching to that unwashed and fanatical flock that Hypatia was a menace to the faith, a sorceress in league with the devil. These diatribes seemed to have little effect upon the sophisticated population of urban Alexandria, who were beginning to realize that Bishop Cyril's Christianity was a cult that didn't play well with children, other children. Deep in the Nitrian desert, however, Cyril's hateful words eventually reached the crude monastery of Peter the Reader. Years of preaching to the wind and converting scorpions had uniquely qualified Peter to be the cleansing sword of the Prince of Peace. And the thought of a devil-possessed woman attacking his Savior was more than this man of God could stomach. Mustering a ragtag collection of fellow hermits, he marched to Alexandria, where they met with the officials of the Caesarean church, who informed him that each afternoon the shameless Hypatia drove her own chariot from the academy to her home. Armed only with clubs, oyster shells, and the grace of God, Peter and his mob ambushed Hypatia in the street near the academy. Pulling her from her chariot, they dragged her to the Caesarean church, where they stripped her, beat her with clubs, and finally, because of an ongoing debate over the soul's eternal status if the corpse remained whole, scraped the flesh from her bones with the oyster shells. The scoops of flesh and the rest of her remains were then carried away and burned. The reaction of the Alexandrian community was one of confusion and shock. And the Neoplatonist school was dealt a blow from which it never recovered. Although he went to great lengths to distance himself from the incident, Cyril took full advantage of the situation and used the terror of the moment to further intimidate the city and establish that the will of the Christian God was to be resisted at one's own risk. The martyrdom of Hypatia was certainly not the first example of truth resisting evil and losing, but it did mark the beginning of a prolonged spiritual delirium tremor from which Western civilization has never fully recovered. Even the bright souls who did not succumb to the universal madness were forced to blossom against the twisted projections of the collective nightmare. Spiritual growth is not impossible in such an environment. But where wisdom is perceived by the world to be ignorance, love is considered sin, and all that is best in the human spirit is condemned and repressed, the road by which the seeker of enlightenment must travel takes many curious turns. On such a journey, one's companions are outlaws and rebels. Sacredness breeds in blasphemy. Truth falls from the lips of false prophets. Heaven is sought in hell, and God is the devil himself. So, I thought this was, in this day and age of vaccine denial and an entire political wing of humanity embraces ignorance as a badge or some kind of virtue, where those around us are willfully ignorant and take pride in it. Again, spiritual growth is not impossible in such an environment. But where wisdom is perceived by the world to be ignorance, love is considered sin, and all that is best in the human spirit is condemned and repressed, woke. The road by which the seeker of enlightenment must travel takes many curious turns. On such a journey, one's companions are outlaws and rebels. Sacredness breeds in blasphemy. Truth falls from the lips of false prophets. And heaven is sought in hell. And God is the devil himself. So that's it for today. Tomorrow we'll do something equally heretical, I think, for Sunday school. Continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. If you haven't been vaccinated, get vaccinated now, and encourage every friend and relative that you have. Take them to the center if you need to. This has gotten absolutely crazy. I remember polio, you guys. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.